get us started. Cool. So yesterday we started exploring Node.js, right? Writing JavaScript on the server so that we can do stuff with it. Today we're going to dive in deeper into packages and how we're going to use built-in modules, built-in packages, and remote packages and how we build them ourselves. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the require keyword. Okay. We saw this yesterday when we were playing with our simple little app, Node Day 1 or whatever. We said require the module express. Require is a function that says read this other script, read express, and give me some variable, whether it's an object, a function, anything like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to build our own module, because that's really the joy of Node.js. Okay, so we've got this Node Day 1 project. That's going to be our main project where we're going to use this module, but we're going to build a module from scratch and take a look at all the things that it does for us. All right, so I'm going to go to GitHub, and I'm going to create a project, and we'll call this, my Node module. Okay, cool. I'm going to make it public. I'm going to add a README, a getIgnore. We're going to pick Node so that it ignores all the files we don't care about, and we'll call it a day. Okay. Then I'm going to copy this URL so that I can create this as a package on my local computer. Okay. So c .. And we're going to do git clone, paste that link. Okay. So from here, what did I call it? My Node project, my Node module. I'm going to open this with Visual Studio Code, and we're going to get started. Right. So what do we have to do? If anyone can remember from yesterday, what do we have to do to tell npm to turn this into a Node project? Do you guys remember the command? Right now, it's nothing.
Is it npm init?
Exactly right, Olivia. Good job. So npm init, right? It's going to give it a package name of my Node module, which is good. Version 1 is fine. We'll say example node module we build ourselves. Okay, great. The entry point, we're going to leave it as index.js, so I'm going to have to make an index.js. If I picked a different name here, I'd have to name my file a different name. So just bear in mind that whatever the entry point is going to be really important for the module's functionality. Okay. We don't have a test command. That's fine. And you'll notice that now, yesterday it didn't have anything in the Git repository, but now it does. It says the Git repository is codebootcamp13 mynodemodule.git, right? Because we already did git init first. We already cloned this from a repo. It's reading the .git folder that's in here, and it says, hey, I know I'm in a repository. Let's pull this in as the repository for the node module. That's all good. No keywords. I'll type my name in here as the author. No license. It asks us to verify. We say yes. Okay, so now we're ready to go, right? We got a package JSON. Okay, so to make this an actual node module, we have to make this actually work for us. We're going to create our index.js. Okay, so in here, right, any JavaScript code we could write, we can write inside of this node module. Right, I can say console.log hello world, right? And if I go like this, and I say node index.js, you'll see that it runs hello world. But we want to consume this node module from our other actual script, right? We're building this to be a packaged bit of functionality that our actual program is going to ingest and do something with, right? So we would do that with the require keyword. So in our other script, let me close my work. Good. So from our other one, right, what we want to do is something like this, where we'd say, const my module equals require, and then we're going to want to give it our name, right? We gave it my node module, right? That was the name of that package that we created, right? So we want my module to have some bit of functionality in here. Now, if I was to run this, what do you suspect will happen? If I was to run my code inside this project.
Want to throw up that error because you don't have the...
Exactly right. It's going to say, cannot find module, my node module. Okay. Now, normally, this would be the point where we'd go and we'd find the, we'd install it, we'd run npm install, and we'd type in my node module. Okay. But the problem is, by default, when we're putting in my node module here, it's going to look at npm, npmjs.org.com, whatever one it is. It's going to look at the published repository, and it's going to see if this module exists in there. Now, chances are there's probably a my node module. Maybe we can verify this real quick. npmjs.com, my node module. Let's see. Yeah, there's my node module test. That's close. But what we want to do is maybe we don't want to publish our module. We don't want to tell the world that this exists. But what we can do that's kind of cool is that we can use this URL, my code bootcamp 13 my node module, and we can install it from here. Okay. First, in order to do that, we'd have to save our changes. Let's push this up to GitHub. Initial entry. Yes. And push. Okay, cool. So now this is on GitHub. Our one-line index.js says, just says hello world. Okay. So I think, and I don't do this very often, so we're just going to test this together. I think I could type in. Where's the URL? Code boot. We can type in code bootcamp 13 / my node module. Code bootcamp 13 / my node module. And I think it's going to pull it. It's going to try to pull it from GitHub. Yeah, it did. Right? It's pulling my node module version 1.0.0 straight from GitHub. It's smart enough to know that GitHub exists. And if we were to go look at my node modules folder here now, oh, I've got all that other stuff. This is all the previous stuff. Let's actually do npm uninstall express, npm uninstall mysql 2. So hopefully that'll remove all this stuff. If we look at package.json, yeah, now all we have is GitHub : code bootcamp my node module. We also have nodemon in here. Let's take that out as well. npm uninstall nodemon. I just want to make sure that we understand what is happening here. So I'm going to delete this entire thing. npm uninstall my node module. Good. So I can delete this folder. We'll just look at it from fresh. Okay. So I'm going to run npm install code bootcamp 13 / my node module, and what you'll see is that it's fetching that resource from GitHub, the source code, and it's putting it in here in my node modules, right? If we had another folder in here, test, right? You can see that my node module, just like Express or just like any of those other ones we were looking at yesterday, was pulled down. You can see this is the index.js in here. You can see the package JSON of what we just created on that other project. So what you'll see when you work in an environment that is very Node.js heavy, when you're going to a company and they live in node modules, they're going to have different repositories for each and every little bit of functionality that they want to create, so that each of these code bases can remain separate. And then they'll ingest them into their main project, whether it's a website or a mobile app, or maybe you're working for a design studio where they built this beautiful website builder with a whole bunch of node modules, and then every client just ingests the modules they need, like authentication or cookie management. All of those different modules work together so that you can build something without having to write thousands and thousands of lines of code. Okay, so now that we've installed my node module, this require will work for us, right? So if I do node index.js, right, you'll notice that I'm inside this index.js. It's saying require my node module. That require is running the index.js that's in here and launching hello world. Now you'll notice when we do Express, when we do these other node modules, the normal thing that is happening is that it's defining a whole bunch of functions, like function say hi. And we'll say console.log hello world. And so now, if I commit this to GitHub, let's actually change the version number too, right? Let's come in here and say version 1.1 now, okay? So now when I commit these changes, I'm going to say updates to include a function. Okay, I'm going to commit and push. Okay, and then back in my original project, the place where we're actually doing the work, right? Maybe we'll run npm update and see if it pulls that information down for us. So it's looking, yeah, so it says, node day 1, right, no repository field. It's saying my node module is now at version 1.1 on GitHub. So we're going to pull in that change. It removed one package, updated one package. and it audited. So it did all those steps. It removed the one that was there. And so now if we look at this index.js, it's now in a function, just like we defined it in our other package. Okay? So now if I run this project, node index.js, right, it's going to do nothing. This is what most of our modules are doing. When we use Express or when we use MySQL, we are calling require, and it is giving us something in my module that we can then use in our script, right? In the Express example from yesterday, we would say, const app equals, Express. We were calling the function that we just created, right? So in our example, if we were defining a function here, we put my module or something like that, okay? But now it's completely up to us how this product functions, and we're gonna use that with the exports mechanism. So by default, right, we in our other project, right, if we look here, we built a function called say hi. So if I was to type in here say hi, what would we expect would happen? Do you think it's going to run the say hi function from this module? What do you think, Josh? Yes or no? Will it run it or not?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. Olivia, what do you think? You think yes? Karif, what do you think?
Yes, it's going to run it.
Okay. Eric Thompson, what do you think?
I think, yeah.
Okay. Wrong. So just like with other things in JavaScript, this is going to mirror other programming languages as well. Each of these packages has its own scope, right? So this program is being run kind of in its own separate call space, okay? So say hi exists in this module. If I was to put say hi in here, for example, and like I've just now edited the local version of this package just to show this off, right? If I run this now, right, it's going to call say hi. Oh, it's calling it index.js first, right? So if I comment that out, right, it's calling hello world when it pulls in this module, because we're calling this function in here. But this only knows about what this module has given it. So it's expecting to get some kind of return from this require function. And the way that is done in Node.js is with a special parameter called exports, right? So we can say exports dot say hi equals say hi, right? So we're exporting this function into the say hi function so that this module can use it. Now, it's by default not exporting all this stuff, right? So if I run say hi here now, right? Let's run this. It's still going to throw that error. What it's doing is it's exporting it as a part of my module. So if we do my module.sayHi, let me run this now, it echoes hello world. If you can think of from the module's point of view, exports is whatever is being returned to whatever called require. We can put as many things in here as we want. We can say exports dot name equals Eric, right? And so now from this module, I can say console.log my module.name, and that will print Eric as well. So all of these modules that we're using that come from NPM or from any other place, even if it's our module, we have an exports object that exists by default that has these functions defined in them. And if we were to take a look at any, like let's do npm install express. If we were to look at any of these modules that we're going to use throughout our course, the module itself is going to have it's going to have some kind of thing that says exports. Oh, I gotta probably refresh, huh? Refresh. There we go. Express. And if we go to index.js, you can see it's saying module.exports equals require lib express. So it's even going a step further. It's saying, the default value of this module is exporting whatever comes back from lib express. So we can come in here and look at lib express, and that is saying it's exporting module.exports is exporting a create application function, which probably comes from one of these. It comes from down here. So they define their function and they're saying, hey, we're going to export this. And then the previous script, the top level express script, is saying export whatever was exported to me. So they're letting us chain this object, this exports object, all into one single variable that is the answer to whatever called the require. We're packaging up all the things that we want to send out as a part of our library, as a part of our module, and we're shoving it into my module. Go ahead, Cree.
And what would be the benefit of this? This sounds like you're going around the world to tie your shoe.
It's kind of like that, but it's about a couple different things. Reusability is a big one, right? You can write one piece of code and use it over and over and over again. Number two is this is happening whether we make our own modules or not, right? We're going to use NPM packages, Express, MySQL. All of those packages are doing this same thing. Number three, especially in the context of working in a professional environment when you're on a team, Josh can be working on whatever my node module is. Olivia can be working on some other node module. Selena is the one who's in there actually building the application using the functionality that Josh and Olivia have built. So everyone can work on their own separate stuff without interfering with everybody's stuff. It is kind of convoluted, but the rules are really simple, right? Anything that is a module is just JavaScript code that is exposing what it can do through the exports function, and then you can consume that, you can use that through the require function.
Okay. All right.
It is kind of complicated, but a lot of the heavy lifting is done by NPM for us. So when we say, I need to be able to connect to a database, we're saying NPM install MySQL 2. Well, MySQL 2 requires 70 different things. It's got to be able to parse your query. It's got to be able to connect to a database. It's got maybe some data storage, caching stuff built in, right? All kinds of complex capabilities come packaged with this single one module.
So it enhances reusability. So I'm not copying and pasting code all over the place. I got it.
You're going to write just a few lines of code to connect to a database and make a query. Behind the scenes, someone took the time to build this giant library for thousands and thousands of lines of code to actually handle that query and return your data to you. When you're a module writer yourself, if you go to a job where you're actually building node modules, what it lets you do is your team can build one node module that each and every project that you work on uses, right? Imagine you're Spotify, right? You can write one node module that handles the get next song button, right? When you click get next song, what song does it send to the player? And now your Spotify web client can use that module. Your Spotify desktop client can use that module. Your mobile apps can use that module. All these different places can use that one piece of code so that you have one place to update and have all those changes on every single device. This is about reusability. Go ahead, Josh.
Can you go back to the code for the
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying the export exports that allows you to, or when you type exports in, that allows you to use it like in your local index.js file. Is that?
Yeah, anything in exports. Exports is just an object, just like this, right? And what we're doing when we say exports.sayHi is essentially we're saying that the exports object has a sayHi property that has the sayHi function, right? We could also write a new function. We could be like say goodbye, and we put in function console.log goodbye, right? It's just an object. But this object is what is returned from the require function. So think of it as like a return statement for a script.
Okay.
This is specific to Node.js. Like this is not built into your browser anywhere. This is just for this type of package management.
So that exports, what you're saying, just so I understand, that exports object, you're saying whoever created this node module, they have gone through the effort to make this, to put a bunch of different functions inside there or whatever to make it easy for you. So that way, when you're on your own code, you can just easily call that function.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. any questions about any of this? We're going to probably build a bunch of node modules, so especially when we start doing web development, right? We're going to use stuff like Express, and Express is going to have like, here's the URL that I want to handle. What we'll find is that we'll want to build a separate node module to handle our router, right? So instead of having one big file that handles everything, we're going to have one big file or one small file that sets up the server, and then one separate file that sets up our paths, right? So that /user loads the user page, /post holds the post page, like how do you create new posts and things. So you're going to use node modules even with like web development, just as a way to like separate your code into separate files, so it's not all in one big giant, 10,000 line long script. It's going to keep you sane, because working in big scripts is a pain in the butt, I guarantee you. Any questions? No. All right. Let's play around with the path module. Now that we kind of know a little bit how modules work, let's start taking a look at some of the individual modules that we're going to use on a semi-regular basis, right? So these are some of the built-in ones that are specific to Node, right? On the browser, we don't have any access to do anything on the computer, right? And so let's take all this out. Let's uninstall everything from our, let's do npm uninstall. I'm going to type express MySQL 2. I'm going to get both of those out of here. Okay, perfect. So we're back to just where we were. And I'm going to take this out. Yeah, so that we go back to what our module was to begin with. Cool. All right, so let's play in here with the path module, right? So let's say const path equals require path. Oop. Okay. And what the path object lets us do is deal with paths. A path in the context of computer stuff is like the hard drive, the file system, that sort of stuff, right? So the first one we want to take a look at is, let's do this from let's do it from a REPL. It'll be easier to just kind of play around with it. So I'm going to come in here, and do you guys remember what REPL stands for? REPL. What does REPL stand for? Go ahead, Eric.
It's like from like REPL.it, and it's a way to I think download some sort of software package.
Close. REPL stands for read, evaluate, print, loop. Right. So it's a console or some kind of environment that lets you write some code, run it, make a change, run it, make a change, run it, right? So REPL is just like a console. It's a development environment. So REPL.it is an example of web-based REPL, right? They're saying, write some code over here, we'll show you what comes out on the other side. So to join the Node REPL, right, we get it built in by default, we're going to say Node. So now I'm inside a Node environment. Okay, so I'm going to do exactly this. I'm going to say const path equals require path. Okay, so now path is an object that is being exported from the require function of the path module. So we got a whole bunch of stuff in here, right? We got base name, join is absolute, a bunch of stuff. So let's explore this object a little bit. So the first thing, right? If we do path.basename, right? That's a function. If I pass in like c:// users / erh, and we'll do like document.text. Okay. The base name is going to return the name of the file that's being called. Okay. Now on Windows and Linux or Unix, right? We have different paths. You Mac folks, like all of your paths look like this: path.basename, and it's like /user / erh/document.text. Right? So base name is going to give you the file name regardless of what type of environment you're on. That's extremely useful when we're starting to deal with software development. We want to just know if files exist, if we want to process them, right? We're going to use the path module to let us know things about the file name. Okay, so I've got this document.txt in here. A second argument that I can put in here is the extension. So if I put text in here as the second argument, I put in an extra parenthesis. Now it's just going to return document. It's going to ignore the extension. Okay. Any questions about this? Go ahead.
Is it possible to just search for a .text document without having the name of the document?
What do you mean? You mean like searching on the
Like
hard drive?
just delete a document.txt and will it just search for .txt?
This is not a search. This is just dealing with this string, the path. This module just lets us do things with the path that we have here. And the reason we are caring about this is that behind the scenes, there's, when you're running a node script, right, there's going to be something in process.env.path, file name, or, when you're actually running a script, like, for example, the environment knows where that script is located. Okay? And so if we get this environment, right, we want to know some things about it. Am I running from this directory? Am I running with this file name? And so the path module that we're looking at right now, this built-in module, lets us know things about the file, about whatever path information we put in here. So when we pull in, if we wanted to know the name of this file, for example, right, we can say, hey, here's the path base name. Give me the .text, or give me the name of the document without the extension. Okay.
Okay.
We could have done the same thing if you can. Let's let path info equals /user /erh document .text. Right. The path module is working with strings. We have a string here that has information about where a file is located.
Okay.
So when we're calling path base name, we're saying, hey, I've got this path. I have this file system location. Please tell me information about it.
Okay.
There's also a path.ext name, and this is also a function. If we put in a path info in here, right, it tells us that the extension name is .text. This is extremely useful if you're building some kind of script that needs to be able to handle PDFs and Word documents and text files and stuff, right? We'd be able to come in here and say path.ext name, whatever, resume.pdf. Right? It's going to tell us, hey, that's a PDF file.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
So in other words, you have to know the path in order to use
your
base name.
And we'll show off here in a little bit. Like, we're going to be getting, most of the time, this path is going to come from somewhere, right? We're going to either get this from some environment variable or something that, like, all of the things that we're showing off is we're going to get from somewhere else. We're going to get it from a database. It's going to have like a list of files in here, and we're going to say, okay, for each of these things, tell me the actual document name so I can display it. Right? We would use path.base name.
Got it.
To get the file name. Okay, so this just helps you. This path module has a whole bunch of stuff in here that helps you understand your file system, where you're at, everything there is to know about like working and living inside the file system. Right? There's also a path.parse, which is kind of like the super-powered version of this. Right? So we put in path info as our thing here. It's going to return an object to us that says the root directory is /, the current directory is /user/erh, the base name is document.txt, the name of the document is document, the extension is text. So all those things we've been playing with as separate functions, path.parse will return us an object that has all that information here. Right? So path.parse.root, that's where we start from. If this path info was actually a Windows path, right? C:// me, right? I already defined it. Let win path info equals C:// me document text, right? If I do path.parse on win path info, okay, now it knows the root drive is the C drive, the directory is C users me, but it still understands that this is the file name, this is the text document, right? This lets us get away with not having to care about, if you're on a Windows, like I'm running this on Windows, right? I'm running all my code here. So if I'm running my program locally, all my paths are going to be like C:/something, whatever. But when I deploy it to my server, the server is going to be Unix. It's going to be /var www vhost something else. Using the path module lets me not care about any of that. It lets me, what is the name of the file I'm currently using, right? I would do path.basename. And then whether I put in path info or WinPath info, I get the same value out of this. Whereas if I was writing this code by myself, right, we could do path info.split slash split, and then I can get 0, or excuse me, 3. Right? I can get document.txt this way, but the problem is if I run this same thing on WinPath info, right, that would fail because they use backslashes. This lets us normalize our code to work on either Windows or Unix or Mac or Linux or any type of thing altogether. It knows about the file system. It knows about the structure. Does that make sense to everybody? So this is a perfect example of why we use node modules, right? If we wanted to write this code ourselves to work on both Windows and Unix, on Mac, Linux, whatever we want, we'd have to write this 2 or 3 different ways. Or we can just use this path module that's built in that already understands the file system. Questions? All right, let's take a look at the file system module. Right, and so all of this information, right, like, if I wanted to write to a file, if I wanted to like make a file exist, read from a file, append to a file, I could search Google and I could say, using node to write to a file, right? So, it's going to take us to a tutorial that's going to tell you, hey, this requires the file system module, right? And so what I would do is just read through this, try to understand what it's asking me to do. But let's take a look at this from like more of a top level type of way to look at this, right? So, So where am I at here? Cool. What directory am I at? Right. So you'll notice that this file system, when we're making directories and things, writing to files, these are all paths. These are all paths. So when we're in here saying write to a file at this full path, it's telling the computer I want to write to this at this location, right? So if we were to pull this up in here, and let's just play with this example. Let's see if I can shrink this down a bit. Oh, that's too big. Perfect. All right, cool. So we can keep this documentation up right where we're at, right? So I can say const fs equals require fs. So all it's doing is calling the node module fs, and it's assigning that to the constant variable fs so that we can use that object, right? If we look at that object, these are all the things that it has built into it, right? It's got a make dir, it's got remove dir. All of the things that we can or would want to do to a file system exists in this module, right? This is something the browser doesn't let us do. When we're in the browser, we don't have a file system module. We can only, we got local storage that's built in, but we don't have the ability to write to files or do anything like that on the computer. So let's kind of work through this example. Let content. Well, let's make this var so we can overwrite this. Var content equals hello from Eric. All right, and let's open up a second terminal as well so we can see this while we're playing. Bloop, 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 bloop. All right, so if I cd, so where I really want to go is CBC13 cd. What did we call it? Node day 1. All right. So I'm going to work in here. If I do pwd, this is my Windowsy Unix path. So let's see if this works. Copy. Right. So if I do fs.write_file, and I put in /c users me CBC13 node day 1 content, and then the third parameter here is if there's an error, right? It's our onComplete function, and so we're gonna a little bit below the screen here. I'm gonna say if there's an error Okay, console.error, error. Okay, return. Okay, and then our code is done, and we close out the function. Right. So it's saying no such file or directory open, and you see that it says C users, right? So that file doesn't exist. So I tried to use this Unixy based / version that we get from Git Bash, but that didn't work. So let's try and do this the other way. And I'm actually going to take out this error thing here. Right? Let's see if this works without it. So let's say C / users / me / CBC13 node day 1 / and then we'll call this like test.text. Oh, I need a callback. That's annoying. So we'll just say comma error. We'll return error. Right, good. All right. So let's see if we actually made this file here. What do we call it? Test.text. It's right there. See it? And if we cat that, cat test.text, it says hello from error. Pretty cool, right? Now, if I was to change the content, right? Content says hello from error. Let's change this to hello world. This is a new message. And we run that same function, fs.writeFile. What do you think has happened to test.text? Who's got an idea?
It changed.
Yep.
Right.
The entire message has changed. The entire contents of the file has changed. So writeFile creates a file that doesn't exist and then puts whatever contents you have as the second argument into that file. If the file already exists, it's going to completely overwrite that file. Okay? There is an append file function that does what I would imagine, hopefully you would imagine this does, is that if I use append file instead of write file, it's going to append it, right? So this would be letting us, append file is going to let us continue to add content to this page, right? Hello, this is a new message, and then it goes right into hello world, this is a new message. Maybe we want to make it so that content equals something else, and then we'll maybe put in a new line, right? So that each line will be separate, right? So now if we append file a few times. If we cat, right? We can see that each one got its own line. Okay. You know, in the context of this class, we're really focused on web development. So this type of writing to a file is probably not something you're going to do super often, unless you want to like write an access log, for example. But if you ever are using Node.js in the context of data science or automating computer workflows or something like that, you know, we might want to write to files and do things, manipulate the stuff we're storing on our computers. So this is just one of those things that you can do with Node that you can't do in the browser. What if we wanted to read from a file? Right? So this is going to, let's see, reading, right? So it's very similar, fs.readFile. Now, the second argument here is you have to provide the data type of that file, right? So UTF-8 is Unicode with 8 bytes per letter. We've been dealing mostly with ASCII, which if you remember is like a 7-bit thing, but UTF-8 is kind of the default for building modern applications, right? It lets us do Chinese characters or Japanese characters. So let's read from that file and display it in our console here, or REPL. Yep, good. So just like with the pen file, right, it takes fs.read file, it takes a path, right, so C / users, me, CBC13, node day 1, test.text. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is our data encoding type, UTF-8. Make this a little bigger. Okay, and then the third argument here is a callback function. So error and data. Let's here, I'll comma. Yep, error and data. And what happens inside this callback is that if there's an error, right, we want to do something, console.error, and then we would do return. But if there's no error, right, we want to do console.log data. Right, this data variable that is the second parameter to the callback. So if I do that, and then I close this out, right, it's reading the file to us. Okay. So if I run this again, oh, I don't have it as I'd have to put it in as line by line, but it lets us read the content of files, right? So we were talking about, like, if you guys think back to, you know, the 90s and 80s and before we had databases, like storing files on a computer was my database. I could, you know, with local storage, for example, we have JSON objects, right? Let my JSON equals, right? We'll do like Eric. We'll do name Eric. Okay, and if we do JSON dot stringify my JSON, okay, this is a string that I could write to a file on the computer and then read that file. So I could use JSON as a storage mechanism using just the file system and not have to worry about databases. Now, databases are way cooler, but in a pinch, if I was doing something very simple, like our to-do list app, right, I could make a new file using write file, and instead of putting in content, I can put in JSON.stringify my JSON. Okay, and so now if we were to look at test.text, it has JSON that I can then read from and put into an object. Okay, if I called this file instead of test.text, this was like user ID 1.text, then every user on the system, assuming they were logged in, could have their own little storage spot. Any questions about the file system module specifically? And you know that if you want to read or write a file, right, the Google search to get you there is, you know, using the file system. Maybe we do like write a file with Node. And it's going to take you right to this type of page. It's going to explain how to use these things. It's going to show you all the different modules, all the different functions that you can do. And then if you look over on the left, right, there's like, you know, Node.js file paths. It's going to tell you about the path object that we just looked at. All of these things work together, right? I've been fighting with this full path name here, right? But the node, you know, maybe the path module will help me get there quickly. Any questions? You are never, ever, ever in your entire career going to get so good at every single aspect of this that you're just going to memorize everything. Literally almost every time I need to write a file in Node.js, I'm searching Google with, how do I do this? There are millions of modules and thousands of functions. You can never possibly remember all of them. But you should feel very comfortable searching Google, going to a page like this, and reading how to, oh, okay, this is going to do this. And if it doesn't make sense to you, right, that's what the REPL's for, right? Just like we said, live inside your browser's development toolbar, right? Like, write the code, see what it says. You can do the same thing here. I should be able to, you know, pull in this line of code and make sense of it, play with it, right? I probably don't want to write to users Joe test. That file won't exist. But I should be able to say, okay, well, if I put in a file path on my computer, this should do something in here. What is it going to do? I don't know. Let's play with it and find out. And they generally do a pretty good job of documenting what to expect from each of these steps, right? This whole thing is a part of like a getting started, right? So if you thought Eric is a bad teacher, right? This page will walk you through a lot of the same stuff we've been teaching over the last week, since Monday anyway. And they're going to get you to where we're going to be by next week. You could read through this entire documentation tonight and be at least ready to go and be like, right? So where are we at? Making an building an HTTP server. Like, this is what we're going to be doing next week, right? Or later this week. It's even got like this little environment so you can write code, right? We can say hi world, right? Hi. Okay, save. How do we save here? Maybe a little save button or something, huh? doesn't let us save it. So it's got some tools and stuff built in to help you play with these things. Take advantage of this. Whenever I'm building something at work that is not something I do on a daily basis, I'm always living in documentation. Any questions about the file system module? Or the path module? Go ahead.
So I finally arrived at the homework that was for XML HTTP request, and if I'm correct, that should be the last homework that was assigned or close to it. But anyway, so it looks like we're gonna use JavaScript to request a file that's already in our own file system, like through an HTTP request. How does that differ from just loading a file off the server?
So it's this architecture. We're having to, in this class, simulate we are the server and the client, right? So when you're using XML HTTP request, that's a front-end process that is making an HTTP request to a server. When we're doing this with our Visual Studio Code server, it's running a tiny little HTTP server to handle those requests. But when we're using XML HTTP request in the real world, it's going to be requesting some remote server on the internet. And it's going to be returning back a document to us.
Okay. All right, well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Good question. All right, it is 4:50. If there's no other questions about the file server, there's a whole bunch of other functions that you can use inside the file server. Where are we at here? The file server module, right? You can we kind of talked about read file. You can rename files. You can check to see if you're allowed to write to them or read them, right? And you check your access to them. The file system module has like 70 or 80 functions that all do different things. Most of the time, it's just reading and writing files, 99% of the time. And as long as you can get to the documentation that lets you, that tells you how to use this module, it's going to cover all of your use cases. Playing with that module, I mean, we can talk about some of these if you ever need to know. Can my program write to this file? Do I have permission? Right? It will return the WOK function. Any question? And go ahead.
Okay, sorry, last thing. So that XML thing was the last homework assigned?
I'd have to go look, but maybe, yes.
Oh, okay. I don't see anything else in my...
Yeah, really over the last couple of days, we've been mostly focused on building that application.
That group project?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, here on out, I mean, we will have more homework individual, but the homework is going to be geared towards doing everything that we've done together, right? All the front-end development, now onto the back-end development. We're going to try to apply everything together because that's really the job, right? You're not going to ever have a task at work where it's like, make an HTML page and that's it, or make a CSS file and that's it. It's always going to be build a page that does something. So we try to practice that as much as possible. Cool. Let's take a break. It's 4:52. Let's come back at 5:10. And we'll start playing with some more modules. Start the recording. Cool. So the next module we're going to take a look at is the OS module, right? It works just like the other ones do. So we're going to say const OS equals acquire OS. And OS in this context stands for operating system. So it's going to tell us information about our computer. Right? And if we look at OS, you can see this object has a whole bunch of stuff in it. I don't even know what all this stuff is. This is all the things that this object knows about my computer and what it's doing. So like, I guess these are error codes, right? So address in use is error 100, right? So anything that might happen on my computer from like a hardware perspective is inside this OS, right? So I can do os.hostname, for example. And that is going to tell me the name of my computer. Okay, so if this was running on a server, right, you might have your company/production whatever.com. Or if you're on a development server, it might say your company/development whatever.com, right? So this is the full host name of the device. It also tells us os.platform, which is our, what kind of computer am I on? For those of you on a Mac, right, you're probably going to say Mac OS X or something, or Mac. I don't even know what it'll say. You'd have to run os.platform to get that to tell you. os.arch, right? This stands for architecture. So this is telling us I'm running on an x86 64-bit processor. If I had a 32-bit processor, this would probably say x86 instead of x64. For those of you on Mac, this might say something else. I don't remember what processor architecture they're using. If you're on, what are some other ones? ARM is a processor type that is getting kind of popular for server architectures. This might say ARM, ARM. It also tells us how much memory we have available, right? So this is telling me the amount of bytes that I have available in RAM, and this is divided by like a million, right? So like 259. I have 25. No, that's not right. 2 gigs. Let's check our task manager and see how much memory we have free. I always forget how much memory. I have about 3 gigs of memory left. 2.6 gigs of memory. So when I divide the total number of bytes I have available in RAM with how much it's free, it tells me I got 2.6 gigs of RAM available for free. If I started closing Chrome browser windows, then all of a sudden I'd have like 14 gigs of RAM available. Right? You can also see how much total memory we have. Total mem divided by 1. Okay. Too many. So I have 17 total gigs of RAM on here. Which is slightly wrong, right? I have 15.9 gigs of installed memory, but the operating system thinks I have 17 gigs in terms of total bytes. We can also see what my home directory is. Right? C users me. Right? So this is one of the path names that we would then pass to the path object that we created. Right? Path dot base name. What was it? os.homedir. Right? So I can find out that like my root folder for my home directory is /me. Or we could do path.parse os.homedir. That's the root, C, the users, space is me. So we can mix and match these modules because the output of one helps us with the input of another. Okay. It also can tell us how long has it been since I last rebooted my computer. This is time in seconds, I believe. So it'd be like right. So the last time I rebooted my computer was 7 days ago. The OS module is super powerful, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? If we look at the OS module in our debugger here, right? It's got lots and lots of possible functions here. We called homedir, we called host name. We could get load averages. How much CPU are we using? There's a lot of really cool things in here. Let's see what user info gives us. os.userinfo. So it's telling me my username is me, my homedir is me, there's that. If I had a shell defined, that would be in here. On Mac, for you Mac folks, this will probably say /bin/csh or zsh. Okay, so it's going to tell you a whole bunch of information about the user running the programs, or about what computer you're on, or how much memory you have available. This is really useful when you're doing stuff at the system level. If you wanted to run some kind of program that processed millions of lines of code, or like a giant text file or a processor, right? You might actually care about how much memory is available before you run the program. That is the OS module. Any questions about that one? Okay. The URL module. So the URL module is not like the other modules in that it's built in already into the language, right? So we would use this with const URL equals new URL. Okay, then we put in some address, https:// we'll do this like google.com/ search.html q equals something, right? So kind of like a realistic looking URL. But what the URL object is doing, when we pass it to the URL object, we can get all of that information when we were in our browser playing with window.location. More tools, developer tools. Window.location. Right, this object is very similar to the object we get back from the new URL object, right? It's telling us the search params. It's telling us the path name, right? What file did we try to load? It's telling us the host name. If we're using HTTP or HTTPS, right? Because those are on two different ports. So the URL module is one of the ways, especially when we start doing web development, we're going to want to create this type of URL so that we can change things and get them back, right? So we can do URL.toString and get back the real string. But I can say URL.search equals, let's say, Q. What do we have for our quiz app the other day? Quiz equals vocab. Okay, and now URL.toString will give us that correctly created URL structure, so we can swap things in and out. When we're building websites, when we're building full web applications, being able to deal with web addresses like this is extremely powerful, because that's 90% of what we care about. We care about what page was requested, what are my query parameters, what was posted to me, am I on HTTP or HTTPS, what is my port. All that comes from the URL object that's built into Node. Any questions about that? We're going to use path name pretty frequently, because that path name gives us the name of the file that we're trying to request. When we start working with Express later this week, this path name is going to be how we create routes. Right? We're going to say, hey, when I go to /user, do this, right? Do this database query, pull our user object. This kind of breaks it up, right? This is the scheme, HTTP or HTTPS. The subdomain is the first one. The top level domain name here is digitalgasm.com. The path is /blog/SEO, and then the query string, or the search field, is the part that comes after the question mark. Right? The question mark and all these properties after this is really what makes programming super exciting, right? Because we can pass variables to our page. Right? So when we've got a server, we've got an application running, right? If I want to search for things and I want to be able to provide, and here's my search information, or in our application we've been working on as a group project, when we wanted to tell us, hey, this is the quiz question and the 4 answers, right? Those are all query parameters that are being passed into the page. Right now we've been simulating it on the front end in our code by grabbing those values straight from the form, but in the real world, when we're actually building real websites that run on servers, right, the request is going to be sent to the server, and we're going to have to grab these values and do something with them inside of our Node.js code. Inside of here, when we're actually, grab those values, put them in a database somewhere, send some kind of response back. There are also, right, inside of the search params, URL, right? So we know that the search is, question mark quiz equals vocab. But if we wanted to add extra values in here, we can use the search params property, which is its own object itself, and it has a whole bunch of cool things in here. So we can say search params dot append, and that is a function that takes a key and a value. So we can say name Eric. And now if we look at URL.search, it has added that in here as an extra parameter. Okay. We can also get them. Right? Get URL.searchparams.get name. It's going to tell me the value is Eric. Or get quiz. The value is going to be vocab. All from those query parameters. We can check to see if something has something. Has is going to give us a true or false. Right, true. If I put in quizzes, it's going to say false. So we can make sure that the query parameters being sent to us by our users match criteria that we care about. Right? Did you provide a user ID? Did you provide a query parameter? Did you provide a quiz name? When we were building our quiz the other day, if we didn't put a question mark quiz equals something, the page would break. With this URL object, we can verify, we can force that to be there, right? Any questions? There is also, we've been learning about event listeners, right? We've been learning about, each element in our front end document.getElementById has an add event listener where we can, watch for click events. Well, in Node, there's no user click events, but sometimes we'll want to build a library that has its own events that we're tracking internally, right? So when something happens, when a database record is added, when a user account is created, we can create our own event emitter with a built-in module called events, right? So we can say const event emitter equals require events. Okay? And so then now we have this event emitter. We can say when a user creation event happens, function in console.log hello. Okay. I think that's actually how you use it, but yeah. We have to do on, right? So we can do event emitter dot on user creation function console.log load. Okay. Must be an instance of event emitter. Oh, I have to. Yeah, we'll do const my emitter equals new event emitter. Yeah, I was doing it on the module thing. All right, so my emitter dot on user creation function console.log hello world, right? So now I have an event, right, an event emitter, and so I can emit events anytime I want in my code. I can say my emitter dot emit, and I can say user creation, and it's going to call hello world every time this event fires. So we can define our own custom events and custom event handlers by using the events object, right? Const event emitter equals require events. Require events. So this events object, right? This is going to fail because we already defined this once. But this events object lets us create our own custom events. So if we're in here writing code, we can say, const event emitter equals require events. We can say, const ev equals new event emitter, right? What is this doing? Yeah. Oh, I need to. Perfect. And so now I can make any type of event I want. I can do const on ready function console.log. The program is loaded, right? So we can define any types of events that we want, and we can have them fire whenever functions are fired. And so what you'll often see is that a JavaScript module or a package, one of these ones that we're doing, will define a bunch of events itself that we can then latch onto in our program. That's how all this is happening. That's built in, so it's letting us write our own events. Any questions about that? The documentation for this, right? Google search, JS event emitter for Node. Yeah, it's going to take you right to this page where you can see all of those. When this event fires, how do you create an event? Right? It kind of shows you kind of walks you through the 6 lines of code you need to implement this. This is a great way to pass asynchronous events around so that like when something happens, like a page load, on page load, or on a user requests a page from my server, on a user login, you can write this as a log event. You can use fs.write file or append file to log that a user has logged into your page. All right. I think that's a pretty good stopping point for today. We're going to have a little bit of homework tonight to build a node module. I know that Josh has to leave in a little bit, but I think it's probably useful for us to go back and finish our group project work. Okay, so we got to a really good stopping point yesterday. Let's see if we can tie it all together, because then what I want us to do is, as we're starting to learn about building a web service with Node tomorrow, it'd be nice to tie everything together and have the web server actually do our data storage instead of, we can build a website that theoretically could be serving all this page content. So, let's see. Let me pause the recording.